Hey David, how are you? Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm super excited to kind of dive into this with you because there's so many agency owners on uh, the internet now. And, I know you've worked directly with agencies, inside of agencies, so you kind of have like the behind the scenes look when it comes to growing agencies and things like that. So I'd love to kind of pick your brain a little bit and see if we can share some knowledge on the strategies in 2024 that are working for either small agencies or big agencies. Before we do that, though, I'm curious to know if you can kind of give everyone a bit of a background of yourself and kind of how you got to where you are.
The short story is spent the last 10 years working inside agencies, um, not doing client facing work, but marketing the actual agencies themselves, kind of doing lead gen for them. And so I learned a lot of things through trial and error and kind of learned what sort of B2B SaaS advice doesn't translate well to B2B services. And yeah, and since then, I've moved to working for myself where I help dev agencies basically with the same thing. So a lot of dev agencies struggle with figuring out, okay, well, how do we market ourselves? We want to focus on developing things for clients, but we need to fill our pipeline. And so I've been focused as of late on just helping those folks, uh, yeah, improve their systems internally to help them bring in more good business.
So I know you've worked with some bigger agencies, smaller agencies, and you've just been in the agency world for a long time. Where do you see people kind of struggle? What areas do you see people struggle in when it comes to trying to grow their agency? Is it they don't know how to generate referrals? Is it they don't know how to market themselves? Like where are the gaps that you see most agencies or agency owners struggle right now?
I think the biggest thing that I see over and over again is that the tactics that got most agencies from 0 to 1 won't take them from 1 to 2. And by that I mean when you're first starting your agency, you have a particular skill set and you're going to try to figure out, okay, well, who wants that skill set? And it might be people across a range of different industries, right? And that's great. That's great for getting going, getting a good book of business, maybe even, building your team. But when it comes to actually trying to deliberately scale, you have to kind of shift your thinking a little bit. The problem with going wide with just one area of expertise is that the only way you're able to continue to grow at that point is either through your personal network, which is probably how you got those initial batch of clients, or through customer referrals. So, and both of those really are kind of unsustainable as a primary, business generation approach. Really, what you want to do is you want to diversify. And one of the best ways to kind of go from that 1 to 2 is to take a hard look at your existing clients and figure out, okay, of these clients, who do we most like working with? Who are our best clients from a revenue standpoint, from a profit standpoint, from a, how you work, how your team works with them, how much you enjoy that type of work. There's a lot of different criteria that you can apply. You can even customize how you're evaluating them. Um, but the bottom line is you kind of need to take a hard look at if we were to, try and clone our favorite or best clients, which one of our clients or which two of our clients would that be? And if you know that, and a lot of agencies, I think, know that intuitively what that is, but they're worried that if they, publicly, on their website or elsewhere, focus on just that type of client, that ideal client, that they're going to be losing business potentially. When in reality, um, they're going to get a lot more of the right fit people coming in the front door, and they're probably going to get, some of those other types of clients coming in and asking, "Hey, would you work with us too?" Even though we don't fit that exact profile, because you're showing a lot more depth of expertise and you're speaking really clearly to that focused client and their pain points. And I think that there's like this halo effect of the expertise you're showing in one area is kind of rubbing off and people assume that that expertise would carry over into what they do.
Got it. And so you're saying when it comes to like an agency niching down, or I know you know the general term a lot of people use is like niching down, you know. Is
Hmm.
that kind of what you're saying? So like picking that person who you can really help and who you enjoy working with, and subsequently you'll get the best results for them because you enjoy it, you'll put more effort into it, you'll, you know it the best. Is that kind of what you're saying? Really honing in on who you want to help and who you can help, and let that kind of flywheel effect take place.
Yeah, I would be careful not to just say like niche down and kind of leave it at that, because I think that sends a lot of agencies in a direction of um, trying to pick the right niche that maybe they haven't already had some experience in. And it's like, oh, well, this might work. And we're going to, try to take this leap over to this other area that we don't have any experience in. Like, I think that's a riskier approach, in my opinion, to, as far as taking your agency in a particular direction in order to grow. What I see as a much more organic approach is to really, you're kind of like, I guess, thinking more in terms of a plant, like if you prune the unhealthy branches, then like the main shoot is going to grow that much healthier, right? So I'm not saying you go and fire all of these other clients, but I'm saying like let's try to focus on the healthiest branch and put all your energy there. I think a lot of times people think niching down is like picking your subcategory versus letting it happen um, organically, like looking and seeing who you already get your best results for and things like that. Like that's a lot less risky of a place to niche down around um, than just trying to, you know, make your best guess or even an educated guess of where you're going to pivot into. So, I mean, I've talked to agency owners who they're like, well, should we pick this niche or this niche or this niche? And it's like, I don't know from the outside, like which one you should pick. I want you to tell me who are your best clients? Like which one of these categories do they fall under? Do you have really good margins with them? Is it good to work with them? Um, it's a lot easier to just look at the data you already have and just make a smart data driven decision based off of that. Aside from all the sort of qualitative things too, as long as wherever you're going to niche down still has a decent addressable market within it, like you're going to be in a pretty good spot um, regardless. Like even if you're niching down, most agencies don't need a ton of clients coming in constantly. They need, you know, a steady stream that is going. And honestly, well, we can get into that later. I had some other thoughts. I was cutting down a rabbit trail.
No, let's dive into it. So, okay, so a lot of agencies don't really need to have this like steady flow of new clients coming in. I totally agree, by the way. And what we do need are clients who stick with us for a long period of time.
Hmm.
And that creates a very like stable business. So whether that's like structuring a contract in a way that like is beneficial for both parties, or pricing your services in a way where it like really makes sense long term for for your client. What are your thoughts around uh, volume of customers versus quality of customers?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say quality of customers hands down. I mean, the amount of uh, time and money resources in trying to get new clients in constantly, just waiting for them to churn, that's gonna cost more in the long run versus getting the right clients in the first place. Even if it takes a little bit more money up front or resources up front, getting those clients that are going to stick around for the long haul, that's going to make for much more healthy growth. And I know a lot of agencies deal with like these sort of feast or famine cycles. And if you want to get off that roller coaster, try to smooth it out with you know consistent long term clients.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot of people on YouTube and X and LinkedIn who run agencies, and they're just constantly looking for new clients. But it seems to be those who are charging a really small amount. for their services. So like these very low cost agencies where they probably have like pretty high churn.
Hmm.
How do you, if someone's in that boat, how would you transition into a higher ticket type of agency where the contract is maybe longer, the scope of work is maybe a bit bigger, broader? Um, what's involved for these kind of smaller agencies who charge, let's say, a couple $1,000s a month, versus those who charge, 10K a month or just have these like six-figure contracts? What's the difference between the two companies in your view?
I think a lot of it comes down to like service market fit, kind of the services version of product market fit. So sometimes I think the scenario is that, you're selling a 3K deal, say, to, a bunch of these people who are more likely to churn. And the reason that you can't go higher is that like that's just the segment of the market that you've kind of carved out, and they don't have maybe the budgets to go long term. So I think sometimes what it means is being willing to kind of try to shift what you're selling, and kind of who has those pain points, and shifting to like solving a more expensive problem, or a problem that is valued at a higher rate by a different part of the market. So I think that's a lot of times it's not a we can just kind of gradually evolve into a higher ticket solution. I think it's a um, are we I guess who is having the problems, the more expensive problems that we can still solve for, and how can we position an offer around that?
So positioning is obviously key, but where do we find these clients? Like, where would you position yourself online? And when I say position, I don't mean um, product market fit positioning. I mean, what platforms do we use? How do you find these people who aren't referrals, who aren't, um, in your network? Where would you go? Like, where's the opportunity to find these people?
Yeah, I would say I think community is the key word here, and it looks a lot like there's a variety of ways that it looks. It can be everything from a Slack community. There's tons of Slack communities out there. There's Facebook groups. There are industry associations that are offline, like regional ones. There's marketing entities, and there's, lawyers associations and accounting associations. Like there's all sorts of associations for many different types of professions. There's even conferences. Those are a type of in-person community. So the way I think about it is the more concentrated it is, with having people in your ideal client profile, like that has is made up of those people, that's a better community to become a part of. Um, Kind of zooming out a little bit, modern social media is kind of it's similar to like a giant community with a whole bunch of sub communities within it. So um, I think of social media as something where you kind of have to find your tribe, but your tribe is there. So it's a matter of finding kind of who are the existing leaders within the tribe. How can you start interacting and engaging with them? And then how can you engage with the other people who are members of the tribe, not just leaders of it? And just so you're basically becoming part of the conversation in that area. And yeah, I mean, it looks like the specifics change, but the principle of, you know, find high concentration communities, whether that's offline or online, wherever. Um, I think that's the best way to go.
And this is something we've talked about a lot, kind of off the air here. But when it comes to, you know, an owner of an agency, uh, you know, their job is really to not only service clients, but produce new business for their company, for the agency. Um, Personal brands has obviously they've been around forever, but really in 2024 and the past like 10 years or so, it's been easier than ever before to create a personal brand uh, organically online. What do you see as the role of a personal brand when it comes to generating business for an agency? Is it just the fact of, displaying your knowledge and saying, hey, this person's knowledgeable? Or is there more to it than that? Is it the main marketing mechanism to use to generate business for the agency? Or is just a supplemental tactic to use for the agency?
I would say it's another part of a good diversification of your lead gen strategy. I would say it's one of the more effective ones. Once you can kind of build build up a following or a community of people that are within your niche. Honestly, I mean, it comes down to trust and authority. Like, if you could have a small following on there, but if you're if the niche that you're in is a smaller one, like that's all you need. You kind of just need like kind of a domain. You need to be a domain influencer, not a massive influencer. You could drive a lot of results with 2,000 followers on LinkedIn, while somebody else with 200,000 or 2 million, could be struggling to get anyone to buy something cheap, you know? So it's not about, saying things that are going to get, go viral or anything like that. It's really more about, am I putting things out there that are going to uh, develop trust in who I am as kind of a representative for my agency. And honestly, kind of related to that, the agencies are a people-based business. It's not like you can be like, and here's our software user interface. Um, like the people are the product. Not in like a crass way, but just, like people are they're trying to figure out, do I know, like, or trust this person as a representative for the team that works with them. And so the more that you can have somebody who is that sort of, I like to say, avatar, or basically this um, another thing I like to say, chief evangelist officer. Your CEO, you're like the chief evangelist for um, your point of view as an agency, your vision for the industry as an agency, all those sorts of things. And personal branding is the term that we're giving it these days, but really it's just um, who's going to be, representing the agency and their point of view in the market and their expertise better than the CEO, who's probably a subject matter expert and also um, can just really easily speak on behalf of the company.
Yeah, what I've found also is, our primary way at my agency, the way we really generate business is through outreach. That's like our primary way of generating new customers for ourselves. And what I've noticed is that when we do outreach, people look you up on Google and they'll find everything that you've done. So if you create YouTube videos, or if you post on X, or if you're on LinkedIn or whatever, they'll find you and they'll look you up. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I see. People look you up more now than ever before. They don't just trust anyone online anymore. They want to see what you post about, like the history of what you do. They want to see how you interact with people. Just they want to know you before they interact with you in any sort of like sales environment. Do you see that happening also?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard multiple people say that, like, when they do cold outbound on top of doing good personal branding work, it actually accelerates or like increases the responses that they're getting. And I think that's you kind of hit the nail on the head there, kind of describing why that happens, because they're probably going and Googling and they're like, okay, who is this person? And if what they find kind of demonstrates authority and familiarity, honestly, with their problem, then it's like, okay, yeah, I can give this person the time of day. But if it's like, somebody's pitching we can increase your social media profile and add thousands and thousands of followers, and then you look them up and it's like, well, like, these people don't have a ton of followers right now, so like they must not be drinking their own Kool-Aid or something, like,
Right.
I think it makes a lot of sense to um yeah, kind of have a library of things showing evidence of your authority that is there waiting for people when you do cold outbound. It's a great foundation.
Yep, I totally agree. The agency space, I compare it a lot of times to being a real estate agent because the barrier to entry is fairly low and the capital required to start one is also very, very low. So the bar is also very low because of that. Um, because the agency world is more crowded now, I think, than ever before because of the internet, which is a blessing and a curse. Uh, how do how do you differentiate yourself now, or how would you recommend an agency differentiate themselves? Because there's it almost seems like, e-commerce marketing agencies are like a dime a dozen. And or whatever, lead gen agencies are a dime a dozen these days. Like they all seem the same. They all seem like they're kind of copying each other. What are your thoughts on like how to differentiate? Is it just like knowing your customer better than anyone else? Or is it like case studies? Is it like what differentiates an agency in 2024? Like, what are those key kind of pillars that we need to focus on to set ourselves apart from the others?
I would go back to what I was saying earlier around kind of who your best customers are and the best work you do for them. Like at the end of the day, it's what problem do you solve better than anyone else and for whom? Um, I actually, speaking of e-commerce agencies, there's a friend of mine who back in the day, I think he's been running his agency for like 15 years. And back in the day, he was a guy who made websites. He could develop them, and he ended up bringing on a partner who was really good on the design side. And so they were designing and developing websites for a while, and they grew, and then things kind of plateaued. And they're like, okay, well, I think what we need to do is niche down. And they're like, well, of the sites that we've done, ecom seems like it's an industry that's going places. So they just focused on ecom websites, design and dev. Fast forward, they grew a bit more. Things plateaued. It's like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? Like, how are we going to adjust? And they saw that their best clients were Shopify clients. It's like, okay, seems like things are going well in there. Let's niche down in Shopify. And then the last time we chatted, things were kind of starting to plateau a little bit. And he's like, this isn't decided yet, but we're exploring now like whether we should niche down even further within doing Shopify websites to just working with pet brands. And it's like, okay, that's very specific, but I think it highlights, honestly, like you said, there's more and more players coming in to the game. And usually that means that there's just more demand as well. Like supply is chasing the demand that is existing. And the e-com agency industry has grown, which means there's going to be more and more vendors coming in that want to help serve that. So, and really what that means is you can have a like a smaller and smaller slice of the pie and still run a very viable business just serving that small slice of the pie. So, I think there's sometimes this reluctance or like narrow down a little bit because they think, oh, I'm going to like be turning away business. But it's like if you're taking a narrower slice of the pie, but the pie has grown significantly from when you started, like there's still plenty of fruit in your slice of the pie, to continue the metaphor. So that's, I guess, the kind of encouragement I'd give to people who are like, I don't know, reluctant about niching down is that um, usually you can see that the overall pie is growing, and that's actually more of a sign to niche down. Is that like you know the more people that are trying to do the exact same thing you do, it means you're not niche down enough, and you can just look to who you do your best work for to figure out where to niche down further.
When I was first starting my agency, I worked with, um, we did content creation, we did lead gen, we did e-commerce, we did uh, everything under the sun. And I worked with tea companies. I worked with supplement companies. I worked with a whole bunch of different kinds of companies, and we were really struggling because it was really hard to make a case study that was relevant to everybody all at once. So if we had a case study for the tea company, like the supplement company would look at it and be like, yeah, but have you worked with supplement companies? And it was just very hard to create traction. What helped us the most is when we niched down and we only worked with fitness, health, wellness companies, that we really started to take off. And and then the case studies that we had were just very, very relevant to other companies we wanted to work with. And so it really started to create traction there. That's what we found worked really well for us too.
Yeah, I spoke with someone not too long ago that basically had a similar story. They were a content agency and they're doing content for tons of people, but they had one like client that had just been with them for like 3, 4, 5 years, like really long time. Like the retention was off the charts, and they were in manufacturing, and they're like, you know what? We need to like kind of understand this whole manufacturing world a little bit better and understand like why is this client sticking around? Like what do they need that we are just such a good fit for? And they did some homework and they realized, oh, like, the way like this is a very sales driven thing. Uh, and we can come in and kind of be just this like, hey, we're going to duplicate your salespeople with content. And that kind of became their angle. And like that's all they work with. But it's made, like you said, like it's made their case studies that much more relevant. It's made um yeah, it's increased their authority significantly with that target audience.
The other thing I've noticed is as you keep going in this business, you create these like baselines. So when you first start out, you have your baseline is zero. So you have like zero revenue. And then you gain a couple of clients, and you're always going to experience some churn in business, especially in the agency world. But there's always going to be that percentage of clients who stick with you for just a really long time. Like I've had clients for like 4+ years. And, you know, when you get one of those clients and you kind of add it to your long-term client pool, there's your baseline kind of raises. And so if you get a little bit of churn from these other companies who just have like poor operations or they're not profitable or whatever, like just the business isn't as good quality as these long-term clients, those customers tend to churn. But as you keep searching and as you keep selling and as you keep kind of adding to your baseline kind of raises over time. And so if you so over time, I've noticed that when your baseline raises, it's almost like you don't have to sell as much because you have that kind of foundation of revenue coming in from these long-term clients, which don't churn either ever or just anywhere near as much as these kind of other smaller clients who do churn. And there's always going to be some churn. Um, it-
But yeah, the more you can try to get more of those types of clients too, the more you're basically saying, okay, like I'm going to be able to sustainably grow my business off of these types of folks without, worrying about again, the roller coaster, the feast or famine sort of cycles that a lot of agencies deal with.
yep, the peaks and valleys. Yeah. And do you have any insight as to like how to spot these clients? Um, how to is it just a matter of like raising your pricing so that those who can afford it kind of filter themselves out? Is it a matter of like looking for certain qualities in clients? Do you have any insight as to like how to find more of these long-term baseline clients?
I mean, I think, and when you don't have one, I think it's just kind of a happy accident. Like you don't know what you don't know before they become a client. But I think the longer you have some of these clients sticking around, the more you have a responsibility as an agency owner to talk with them and do your homework as to like what are the pain points that you solve for them better than anybody else? Like what is it that made you choose us in the first place, but also that makes you stick around over the long haul? Because usually, like you dig deep enough, and there's some sort of insight in there where it's like, oh, well, you guys do this better than anybody else that we've found, and it's like, oh, well, we've been doing like this wide range of things, but we didn't know that like the biggest value that we provide is in this one area. And then it's like, okay, well, now we can find other people like them and we can really highlight this one particular area that we provide the most value in. And then, I mean, by leading with that, you're more likely to close people who resemble uh, that target type of client.
Yeah. That's one thing I've always struggled with is to like how to identify those good clients, those good because it's tough to say like, oh, what are your, operating margins? What are your, what's your getting down to like the real nitty gritty of their profitability and things like that on like a sales call is sometimes challenging because sometimes they're just not open with it or they don't want to share that information or whatever. But one quality that I've noticed amongst my best clients is that they're just really good operators. Like they are on top of their game. You can kind of like sense that type A personality when you're on like a sales call with them. They have
Mm-hmm.
this like ambitious attitude, this get it done type of mentality. And those tend to be our best clients that stick on for a really long time. So that's at least what I've noticed.
Yeah, well, and maybe there's something about the service that you offer that really appeals to those type A personalities. So that's where, you could dig in with some of these folks and say, hey, like, what is it about our agency that where you said, yes, like, you're the right person to work with? Do we do something different than what other agencies like you've worked with that really drew you to us? And figure out what that thing is so you can lead with that, and then you might attract more of those type A personalities.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, and again, it comes back down to like your messaging that you're putting out there, the positioning, um, the content that you're producing. Um, when it comes to producing content and kind of showing your authority and showing your expertise, your knowledge, things like that, is there any sort of formula, for a lack of a better term, that you've seen work really well? For example, posting on X and LinkedIn or LinkedIn and YouTube, and then it kind of narrowing down even further, like what kind of content, whether it's like informational content or like case study content. What is there any sort of like special mix that you've noticed that seems to gain more traction than others?
I think, honestly, the real answer is it depends, which is, I know it's not very satisfying,
Annoying answer.
but maybe at a high level, I'd say, um, you know, to build authority, you have to um, show that you know your client decently well. Um, so the more broad you are, the harder it is to show authority because you're trying to spread your expertise across a range of different industries or verticals. So the more you can focus, the better there. Um, I would say being able to kind of speak the language of your industry vertical. So usually within these sort of tribes, like I was talking about earlier, um, there's certain lingo, and if you're not using the lingo or you're using it in the wrong context where it's like clear that you don't know what you're talking about, those are going to be like dead giveaways, and people are going to be like, yeah, like this is a marketer trying to sell this thing to me, or this is a salesperson trying to sell this thing to me that they don't know our business well. But honestly, the more people feel seen and known and like understood their business, like about their business, the more they're going to be receptive. So I think honestly, the biggest thing you can do in my mind, as at kind of high level, is demonstrate you have a strong command of the problem that they're trying to solve, like, and the nuances around it, and the consequences of it, the impact of it, um, and just being able to kind of talk about that and talk about how you think about solving that. Um, I think that just that combination can be really, really powerful because people are gonna be like, yes, I recognize myself in what you described, and I have that same pain. And then when I read or see what you're espousing as the solution, it makes a lot of sense to me, and the next natural thing is for them to be like, well, how do I get to, like, how do we continue with that solution? Like, is that something you provide? Like, what are the next steps? So really tease things up for more of a commercial conversation. But I think it has to be kind of done initially with sort of this mindset of, I'm trying to be helpful and trying to provide value, not looking for something in return, but just to um, provide benefit to the industry. And if somebody takes that back and they implement it on their own, great. But if they need some help implementing it, and they work with you, even better.
Yep. There's guys like Frank Kern or Dan Kennedy, um, Jay Abraham, like these guys who are direct response marketing types. And they always say, like, at the end of every piece of content, always have a call to action. Do you subscribe to that? Or do you think that there's a place for just goodwill where there's content, no ask, no call to action? Or as marketing people, as agency owners, um, is it's kind of like in my DNA also to always have the ask at the end of value, something like that, like provide
Mhm.
good value, but then ask at the end of it. Um, where do you sit on the fence when it comes to direct response versus just, marketing for the sake of marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably depends on the stage of the company, to be honest.
Hmm.
Um, I think when you're smaller and you kind of have to beg, borrow, and steal, every dollar that comes in, I would say, yeah, like include more CTAs, either you know, like book a call sort of things, or, hey, sign up for our email list or follow us on social or something like that. I think the larger you get, the more you can kind of um, depend on like the brand overall. Like if you went to the Nike website and they just have like all these flashy videos of like athletes, wearing their stuff, like their website is a brand play. Like, yes, you might be able to buy some shoes if you dig a little bit, but they've reached the point where they're it would be out of place for them to have like a really big CTA like buy shoes after this really like impactful video, right? So I think, yeah, I think I guess the larger the brand, like the larger your brand gets, the more you can invest in and more it makes sense to kind of do these more brand plays that don't have a CTA. But I think, especially as you're starting out, I think it makes a lot more sense to focus on, having a good, compelling CTA.
Is there, I guess, any either little piece of knowledge, any nugget you can drop as we're kind of like closing this out here? Anything that you can kind of share with either aspiring agency owners, new agency owners, veteran agency owners who want to grow their business regardless of stage? Anything you can kind of close this up with that is of value to them?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind, this has come up in a number of conversations recently, is that when you niche down, which can be kind of a scary thing because it feels like you're turning away business in some sense. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but going deep in one area can actually create a halo effect that because you're building more authority in one area, and you have a subject matter expertise related to that, um, it it can rub off. Basically, people will be like, "Well, can you do what you do for me too?" Even if they're in a separate industry. So in reality, I've seen a lot more agencies get more consistent business, not only from their ideal clients, but they'll get people coming in from these other verticals that are adjacent, wondering if you could also do similar work for them. Like I focus on development agencies, and I've had other types of agencies approach me and say, yeah, uh, you know, I go look at your website and I know you focus on software agencies, but like would it work for my agency too? And the fact of the matter is, like, the playbook is like pretty much the same. So yes, I could work for these other types of agencies, but it's really just that I've decided to focus on who I can do the best results for. But if they'd like to work with me and they're in one of those other categories, um, like, I'm not going to say no. So and so I think that's, when people are concerned or worried about whether or not to niche, I'd say there's a lot more upside than there are downsides, even if it doesn't look that way before you go into it.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for joining. This was great. I think there's a ton of great kind of nuggets that people kind of pluck out of this conversation and apply to their business. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.